Welcome back to the best division in football with your boys Awthentik and The Beard. The best television show not on TV. We about to give y'all a wild card weekend preview with neither one of our teams down here in the finalist of teams here in the NFC. Big shout out to the gang. Y'all know what it is. New York Giants in the building. I'm sure the Beard's Commanders family is in the building one time. There are 6 wild card games this weekend. 2 on Saturday, 3 on Sunday. We got 1 on Monday night featuring the Philadelphia Eagles. There are 6 new playoff teams in 2023, my New York Giants not being one of them. We got ousted on our way here. The Browns, the Lions, the Packers, the Texans, the Rams. And the biggest surprise of the whole playoffs to me is the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't know how Mike Tomlin kept that team together with shoddy quarterback play, even when they were healthy, and just a roster that definitely did not yield any type of playoff berth here and whatnot. 4 divisions with a new division leader this year. You got the Ravens, who took over for the Bengals. The Texans took it from the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Dallas Cowboys took it from the Philadelphia Eagles. The NFC East has not had a repeat division winner since 2004. And the Detroit Lions, who have been absolutely hot, took it from the Minnesota Vikings. Today, we're going to be focusing on the 2 NFC East matchups. The 11-6 Philadelphia Eagles are going to be taking on the 9-8 Buccaneers. The 12-5 Dallas Cowboys going to be taking on the 9-8. They're another surprise, those Green Bay Packers. But without further ado, let me bring in the best co-host in the country, the strong side to the left side duo, sitting on the couch with your boy Awthentik here for these playoffs one time. My brother from another, The Beard. What's going on, my guy?
Hey, I'm feeling great. How are you feeling, though? You have a little bit of nerves leading up to your NFL playoff debut at the quarterback position?
Nah, no nerves, man. You know how I do, man. You know what I'm saying? It's football on Sundays, YouTube on Mondays. I've been doing this, man. I finished the year strong, man. I got my Packers into the playoffs, getting some healthy wide receivers back. I think I got a good shot here going up against those Dallas Cowboys.
Don't let the Dallas Cowboys fans in the chat hear that now because, they might think that you've been drinking a little bit of that beard Kool-Aid.
Hey, that's why we got the segment in the little, to be able to go over it, really bring some nuggets to the table and, show some support to my Dallas Cowboys. It's kind of like a reverse psychology tactic I'm using
Absolutely.
here.
And listen, big shout out to Awthentik. If you guys haven't, make sure you guys, when you get a chance, go back and check out some of the pre-recorded drops that Awthentik has been dropping over the last couple of days. Absolute gems in there, so make sure you guys go check out those videos. Hit a thumbs up, drop some comments in the comment section. We appreciate it.
Do what you do. No pressure on y'all, man.
No
we just
pressure.
Cooking up this content, throw it out there to y'all. This one from today is definitely a heat sinker for sure. A lot of people gonna like this one because it does give you some options of what the New York Giants could have done as far as the rebuild. But I think this one's going to catch a little bit more shade than the normal Awthentik and The Beard video.
I was there when it sparked, man. When that whole thing sparked, and it was a crazy spark. We had a good conversation about that. But it's playoff time, and I'm excited. I just said, I sat down and kind of looked at all these games. If you guys aren't following us on Twitter, make sure you guys give us a follow on Twitter. When the schedule first came out, I did my own rankings. I did a top 10 rankings of what I thought were the best games going into this weekend. And, it's going to be tough. Some of these games are going to be really hard to pick. I think we're going to get some really exciting games, a lot of high-scoring games. There's going to be some bad weather games. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really excited to talk about it. These 2 games that we're going to talk about today, the Eagles and the Cowboys, there's both of these teams are playing against teams that kind of can give them some trouble, I think, even though both of those
set
teams
that trap for you one time.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, especially a team like the Eagles who finished the season 11-6, and they're playing a road game for their first playoff game. It's kind of crazy, but definitely going to be a lot to talk about, a lot to dive in. Big shout out to everybody who is watching us across all the platforms on Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, and of course, right here on the YouTubes. We appreciate all the love and the support. Plural. We're going to go plural for now on. It's always going to be the tubes. But, big shout-out to everybody in the chat. We are excited to talk some football.
Yeah, most definitely, man. One little interesting nugget I want to throw out here before we get off into these games. As far as Super Bowl titles, the Philadelphia Eagles are coming into the playoffs with the least amount of titles of all of the teams, I believe. You got the Buccaneers with 2, the Dolphins with 2, the Rams with 2, Ravens with 2, Chiefs with 3, Packers with 4, 49ers with 5, Cowboys with 6, and the Pittsburgh Steelers with 6 as well.
Buffalo's never won a Super Bowl, though, right?
And Buffalo not on that list, yeah. So definitely as far as titles go, lowest number of titles. Buffalo, no title. Any other teams in here with absolutely no titles?
I guess the Texans, right?
Yeah, Houston, Texas, man. I'm rooting for C.J. Stroud, definitely, man. I want to see him do his thing. Maybe get his first playoff victory.
It's
Who knows?
tough. C.J. Stroud, Joe Flacco, the storylines. You know I'm a sucker for a storyline, man.
Yeah. Joe Flacco, what they say this was like his 18th career playoff game, man. What a representing for them OGs, man. Big shout out to Joe Flacco. Yeah. But let's start off with this Philadelphia Eagles matchup. They're going to be traveling to Tampa Baker to take on the Tampa Baker Buccaneers. I cannot believe it, but let's get right to it. All right, man, definitely looking forward to this matchup. The number 5 seed Philadelphia Eagles are going to be taking on the number 4 seed Tampa Baker Buccaneers. Bucs sitting at 9-8, Philadelphia Eagles sitting at 11-6. Kickoff is Monday night at 8 p.m. That's going to be an amazing way to finish out this wild card weekend. Last week, the Bucs beat the Panthers 9-0. I talked about this backstage with the Beard, just 9-0. That's a little bit alarming if you're a Tampa Bay Baker Nears fan, like my homie Muhammad, like my brother Track, all of y'all out there. I'm sure y'all are, shaking in your boots one time. The Eagles lost to the New York Giants. They not feeling that much more confident either. They lost to the Giants 27-10 last week. Last meeting, the Eagles beat the Bucs in September earlier this year, 25-11. The Eagles ran 78 plays in that game to Tampa Bay's 44. They outgained the Bucs 472 yards to 174. You can't forget about Jalen Hurts' playoff debut against the Bucs as well from the 2021 season. They ended up losing that game 31-15. The Eagles were down 31-0 entering the fourth quarter in that game before they ended up scoring 15 points in the fourth quarter of that one. As far as the series record goes, the Eagles lead with a record of 9-8. The Bucs lead the playoff series lead with a record of 3-2. Now, the biggest concern in this game coming in for both teams, but really for the Philadelphia Eagles, is the injury bug right now that hit them last week. It was a meaningful game, not a meaningless game, because the Philadelphia Eagles were trying to get to that top seed in the NFC East to win the division. But they ended up losing A.J. Brown in that game. He did not participate in practice today with the knee injury, along with safety Reed Blankenship dealing with the groin injury. Jalen Hurts was limited in practice today with the dislocated finger. Full participants, Devonta Smith, that's looking really good for the Philadelphia Eagles. Darius Slay, who's been dealing with the knee injury, he was a full participant as well. And we know we had DeAndre Swift miss last game with the illness. It's definitely going to be a good look for them to get him back. I think he's going to be the key to this victory, possibly the X factor. For the Bucs, Baker Mayfield, he didn't practice on Thursday as well. He's dealing with the ankle injury and the rib injury, but Mayfield is expected to play in this game. You also had left tackle Tristan Wirfs, who's dealing with an illness as well, and linebacker KJ Britt dealing with a calf injury. All of them were non-participants in practice today. The Bucs are in the postseason for the 4th year in a row, tying a franchise record. That's a very sneaky little nugget for them right there, for a team who's been kind of wavering, from the Jameis Winston years into the Tom Brady years, now into the Baker Mayfield years as well. Tampa Bay won its second Super Bowl in 2020, lost in the divisional round in 2021, and they were beaten in the wild card round last year by the Dallas Cowboys. They've won the NFC South 3 years in a row now. A lot of people didn't expect them to win the division this year. I know some people that had them as low as the bottom of the division this year, but they end up winning that. Somebody had to win that division. That's just what it is, unfortunately.
At least they had a winning record, right?
Yeah, they had a winning record. You got to give them the 9 wins. It wasn't some, 7-9 type of vibe or 7-10 type of vibe. So that's a good look. I know the Beard as a Commanders fan can attest to that, winning your division with the losing record and whatnot. The Eagles started the season 10-1, and they've been 1-5 since. Eagles ended the season losing 5 of their last 6. Very, very tough way to end the year, trying to kind of limp into the playoffs here. The Eagles, when they played the New York Giants this past weekend, they had 3 punts, 2 turnovers on their first 5 possessions before just waving the white flag and resting their starters in that game. And the Eagles offense, we talked about this maybe about a couple of weeks ago. Shout out to the homie, that's Brett Coleman, who put out a great video detailing what was wrong with the Philadelphia Eagles offense. And now a lot of people are kind of jumping on that bandwagon, speaking to the deficiencies of the Philadelphia Eagles offense, the play design, the play calling, the execution, the situational football that they've been dealing with over there. Nick Sirianni sitting on the hot seat right now for me. And I'm going to run off a couple of nuggets before I throw this over to you. This is the number one thing for the Philadelphia Eagles. I read a great article today. I'm kind of upset that I can't quote who the writer was on this article. I'll try to double back and put that in the description on this one. But the Eagles got to get back to creating explosive plays. And I got a bunch of nuggets from this article that are going to detail this here for y'all. In the last 7 games of the regular season, the Eagles didn't have a pass play go for more than 40 yards one time. Not even one time did they have a pass play go over 40 yards. The Eagles have 2 1,000-yard wide receivers on the roster, both of them kind of coming into this game dealing with injuries. Devonta Smith's ankle injury looking like it's kind of behind him, but A.J. Brown definitely a question mark coming into this game. The Bucs have allowed 42 plays of 25 or more yards this year. That's the 6th most when it comes to explosive plays of over 25 yards or more. Last year, the Eagles had 38 pass plays go for more than 25 yards. That was the 3rd most in the NFL. They also had 15 pass plays go for more than 40 yards. That was the 3rd most last year. Now, this year, they only have 8 pass plays over 40 yards, just 9 plays over 25 yards in the last 7 games. And the Eagles are the only team in the league that does not have a 40-yard play since week 10. My New York Giants got one. The Beard's Washington Commanders got one. Plenty of terrible teams out there have a play that went over 40 yards, and the Philadelphia Eagles do not have one in their last since week 10. Now, Jalen Hurts, this was the nugget that rounded it off for me that was like, wow, the Philadelphia Eagles have really had consistent quarterback play for a really long time. Jalen Hurts, his 15 interceptions this year are the most by an Eagles quarterback. Take a guess. I'm going to let you take a guess on this. Since when? A year. When do you think the year was?
1963.
I mean, that's kind of crazy. It was 1988. It was Randall Cunningham. But think about that streak right there of to not have a quarterback throw over 15 interceptions through all these guys they went through, from McNabb to Carson Wentz to Nick Foles to Jalen Hurts. He has the most interceptions of any Eagles quarterback since 1988. And if you remember correctly, I know we were youngins back then, Randall Cunningham, when he came into the league, the Eagles really struggled with how to utilize him because this was before running quarterbacks was a thing. So he was getting sacked a ton and he was throwing a lot of interceptions. But Jalen Hurts, I will say that he is not the main culprit as far as blame goes. I'm going to play a New York Giants fan type of game here. It's not all on Jalen Hurts. You know how we like to do that, right? Anytime somebody say anything negative about the quarterback, why are you blaming just him? We're not blaming just him. I do think Jalen Hurts' regression has to do a lot with the pass catchers and not being able to get the explosive plays down the field. But before I kind of dive into some more matchups, what's your thoughts on this one here?
I mean, obviously the injuries are a big key here. You know, you talked about that for both of these teams. You know, you have 2 teams that are just playing in the opposite direction. You talked about the team record in the last 6 games, last 5 games, 4-1 for Tampa Bay, 1-4 for Philadelphia. 2 teams in the opposite direction. Like, it's just kind of difficult to go into the playoffs like this. There's a big difference between, like, you know, going into the playoffs, 1 in your last 4, you know, 4 losses, 1 win, but then going in with all the injuries and that sort of momentum, it's just, for me, it's kind of difficult because, you know, obviously I was super high on the Eagles. The Eagles and Ravens were my Super Bowl picks to in the beginning of the year, you know, so it's like, I want to believe that Jalen Hurts is just Jalen Hurts and, like, you know, kind of like that Patrick Mahomes effect. But, like, with the finger, he's just kind of banged up. There's a lot of things in this matchup, too, that kind of worry me for the Philadelphia Eagles. Obviously, you pointed out about the matchup earlier this year, which I kind of, you know, put on the back burner. Didn't really think too much about that because are these 2 teams completely different teams than when they faced each other earlier in the year? Like, that's kind of something that you kind of got to think about, too. I mean, Mike Evans, to me, is probably, I mean, he has to be considered one of the best wide receivers in the National Football League. Led the league in touchdown receptions this year. You know, he has 1,255 yards on 79 catches. You know, so, like, that's pretty crazy to me, like, right there. And then, you know, for a majority of the part of the season, I remember talking about Tampa Bay's pass defense on the parlay. And their pass defense has gotten a little bit better, but they're still giving up the 4th most passing yards per game in the National Football League. And probably a lot of that has to do with some of those explosive plays that they've allowed that you talked about. So can Jalen Hurts, with the finger, with, you know, everything basically going against them in the last couple of weeks, can they take advantage of that Tampa Bay pass defense? That's going to be, you know, very important. But I think you got to also be able to run the rock too. Like, DeAndre Swift is another guy that can be a big play capable sort of situation. 229 carries, 1,049 yards. That's a nice little YPC right there, if you ask me.
4.6 yards per carry, 5th most rushing yards in the league.
You can't really, just forget about DeAndre Swift. And I feel like the Eagles have done that multiple times throughout the season. They just kind of like, you just forget about DeAndre Swift. Like I remember just the beginning of the season. And I've talked about this multiple times during this bad stretch for the Philadelphia Eagles. Tampa Bay, though, another thing that they're really good at, they're good at getting that to the quarterback. They're 8th in the NFL in sacks this year. They have the 8th most sacks out of everybody. So they can get to Jalen Hurts. And if they can get to Jalen Hurts, they can cause a problem, especially with that hand. I'm assuming they're probably going to be trying to run a lot of quick plays and then kind of mix in some of those downfield attempts in order to keep Tampa Bay off balance a little bit. And you got to be able to run the ball. But Tampa Bay's run defense, surprisingly, some of these numbers I didn't even really think about. 5th best rush defense in the National Football League. They're only allowing 95.3 yards per game. There's only a handful of teams left in the NFL that are allowing under 100 yards per game. So that's another thing that you kind of got to think about too. And one of the things we always talk about with the Philadelphia Eagles, especially with Jalen Hurts and the what do they call it? The brotherly shove.
The brotherly shove, yeah.
Is how good they normally are in the red zone. They're going to be going up against this Tampa Bay defense, 3rd best defense in the red zone. They're only allowing opponents a red zone percentage of 42.6%. So, Philadelphia cannot afford, and Philly's a team like the Lions and stuff like that. They like to go for it a lot on 4th down. And it's going to be interesting to see how some of those teams, like the Eagles and the Lions, how much different do they approach those situations now that they're in the playoffs? Do they keep that same mentality, or do they kind of, get a little bit more conservative because there's obviously everything's on the line? It's win or go home at this point, So that's going to be something to kind of keep your eye out on when it gets down to the red zone. But Philadelphia is still one of the best teams offensively. It may not be shown as of late. It may not necessarily look like that on paper. They're 16th in passing, 8th in rushing. It's still Jalen Hurts. It's still DeAndre Swift, Smith, Brown. They still have the weapons there. I think it's just going to kind of be like a gut check sort of situation. Another thing that is really interesting to me too is, one of the things we talk about a lot when it comes to playing Philadelphia is time of possession when you're playing against Philadelphia.
Big time.
Tampa Bay is 11th worst in the National Football League when it comes to time of possession.
Okay, so kind of close to middle of the pack there.
Yeah, so kind of like that weird range where it's like you can't say bottom 10 because it's a lot easier to say bottom 10. But 11th, so they're right around there. But I think Rachaad White has been absolutely fantastic this year. I think he flew under the radar for a lot of people. It was 10 yards away from 1,000 yards, 6 touchdowns. He was banged up for a little bit too, but he can catch the ball in the backfield. What was that?
He ended the year real strong.
Ended the year really strong. I mean, he was a guy we talked about a lot on the parlay too, So it's for me, there's a lot of similarities here between these two teams, but there's also a lot of differences. And this is what makes this game so difficult for me, because if you look at it, like, there's a lot in favor for me in this matchup that favors Tampa Bay. Yeah. And they're at home, and Philadelphia's banged up, and Philadelphia is coming in just playing bad football over the course of the last, 6 to 8 weeks, you could say in some cases. Like what really pushes me over the edge to choose Philadelphia? I'm still kind of wavering on that decision. Do I just go with the Jalen Hurts effect like I spoke about when I started this? I don't know. That's what makes it super tough for me. But I think it's going to be a really good game. And I don't know. When I say a really good game, it might not necessarily translate to what some people think a really good game, but I think it's going to be a competitive game. I don't think one of these teams is going to necessarily blow out the other. But, it is football, so you never know.
Yeah, that's definitely a fact there, man. There's a bunch of matchups here that are, you could say, coin tosses, and I think one of the matchups that's extremely important is the DBs versus the wide receivers. Mike Evans going up against the Eagles secondary. I like that matchup the best of any wide receiver going up against the defense. Now, A.J. Brown coming in banged up, Devonta Smith just coming off the injury, both 1,000-yard wide receivers. That's amazing. But the Eagles' defense, especially their pass defense, has been a liability here for a long time, pretty much the whole entire year. And you just saw the New York Giants go out there and get a bunch of explosive plays against them. So I do think that the leverage goes to the Buccaneers when it comes to the passing game. It's going to take an outstanding game from Jalen Hurts to be able to step up with the injury, be able to find a way to throw this ball down the field. I think that's where they eat the most, because it's kind of interesting that the Philadelphia Eagles don't try to line up a guy like Devonta Smith a little bit more in the slot to create some different type of leverage for these matchups. But that's not something that they do. Now, the other matchup I like is Jason Kelce going up against Vita Vea. That's going to be an interesting one in the middle, especially if the Philadelphia Eagles commit to running the ball. I think that's super important. It's obviously going to be a matchup in the passing game, when Jalen is trying to take his deep shots and whatnot. But you talked about DeAndre Swift, and I was doing a little math. If it looked like I was typing a lot there, I was doing a little bit of math, because you talked about him, kind of going like ghost in some of these game plans when it comes to getting the ball. So I want to ask you, what would be the ideal number as far as rushing attempts per game that you would want to see from DeAndre Swift to be comfortable?
See, for me, I can give you a number, but when I think of DeAndre Swift and touches, I think about not just the actual carries.
You could do both. You could do rushes and then you could do touches.
I would like to see him be at least a 20 a game guy.
Yeah, because right now when I was doing the math, he's getting almost 15 carries a game. I don't know how many attempts in the passing attack he's been getting, but, just using my eyes, it seems like they haven't used him as well as they could use him in the passing attack. I don't see the Eagles running like a lot of Texas routes out of the backfield. They're not setting up a ton of screens for DeAndre Swift. And honestly, if they would have I know Swift didn't play the last game against the New York Giants, but if they would have committed to the run early on, they would have been more in that game.
Yeah, Gainwell broke a couple of big plays. Yeah. It felt like in that game. Like I can't remember if it was a pass or a run, but I remember
some runs as well.
Yeah, he broke out a couple of big plays in that game.
Yeah, and I think the Eagles get a little bit like predictable when they're not running the ball. And I think that was the whole thing of like, when we talked about Jalen Hurts last year a lot, we would always say that he was one of the better quarterbacks at keeping a defense off balance. But when you remove the read option and some of that,
changes everything.
It just changes everything. Like now Jalen Hurts does not even look like a rushing threat really from the quarterback position. And, not committing to the running backs in the backfield like DeAndre Swift and Kenneth Gainwell. I'm glad you brought him up because they should give him some carries in this game as well. But DeAndre Swift, 14.5 attempts per game. It's not too terrible. He had a career high this year, 1,263 scrimmage yards. So this is not the first organization that has been kind of struggling how to utilize him. And I think that's been the story for a lot of running backs. He also had 39 receptions for 214 receiving yards, 6 total touchdowns, 5 on the ground, 1 through the air. And this is his first season with 1,000 or more rushing yards. So, he's the productivity is there. But when you look at the low amount of attempts, I think 229, I believe is what you said it was.
Yep, 229.
He's the kind of guy that I think you could, as far as some of these other hybrid running backs, when you look at Tony Pollard, Saquon Barkley, Austin Eckler, like DeAndre Swift seems like the guy that should be getting the most carries out of all those guys. And that just hasn't been the case. So I hope that the Philadelphia Eagles kind of get back to, just square one here and get back to the running game. I think that'll help injured, Jalen Hurts coming into this game and kind of mask what's going on with A.J. Brown. Maybe the Bucs will fall asleep kind of thinking that, he's a little bit banged up, and then you could get the play over the top. I also think it's going to be very important to get pressure on Baker Mayfield in this game. And the Philadelphia Eagles, their defensive line and just their pressure on the quarterback has regressed this year a little bit. They went from having 70 sacks last year, which is, I believe, a franchise record for the Philadelphia Eagles. That was 15 more sacks than any other team in the entire league. They lost their defensive coordinator and their offensive coordinators. Definitely, showing that the lack of presence there from the coaching staff is definitely hurting them a little bit. And this year they fell all the way down to 43 sacks. But the guy that I think has to absolutely show up in this game if the Philadelphia Eagles have a chance at this one is Hassan Reddick. And he's remained consistent, back-to-back Pro Bowl nods here. He had 11 sacks this year. And right now the Bucs rank 14th in sacks allowed per pass play. They're allowing a sack on 7.4% of their pass plays. So they're right in the middle of the pack when it comes to allowing sacks. And I do think Baker Mayfield is a pretty decisive quarterback. He does know how to get rid of the ball quick. And when he can't get rid of that ball, you can definitely bet all your money on he's going to roll to his right and hold the ball as long as he can and then try to throw it out of bounds. But I do think that, whichever quarterback plays better in this game, their team is going to win. Baker Mayfield's the kind of guy that, from what I've seen from him, not scared of the primetime lights.
No.
This is a big game. I don't know if you remember the last big game we saw from Baker Mayfield on a Monday night. It was when he came in with the Rams, right? And he completely showed up. I think he had 3 touchdown passes in that game, led them to a victory. I know that Baker Mayfield is not scared of this moment, and I think some of the other quarterbacks in Wildcard weekend, we haven't seen them in the playoffs, especially some of the younger guys, C.J. Stroud, my doppelganger, Jordan Love, a few others there, that are going to be a little bit, I'll say just a little timid in this moment to start the game. I think Baker Mayfield is going to come out here and try to put some points up on the board early, but you can't have a game like you had against the Carolina Panthers last week.
No.
It can't be one of those ugly games. Baker dealing with the injury. He came up hobbled with the ankle, had the ribs. He's holding on to the ribs. You want to see a healthy Baker Mayfield out here go against the Philadelphia Eagles. Before we get off into the scores, though, I do want to bring up one. I gave us one prop bet per game, and I want to see how you feel about this. I had to get at least a couple in here one time. What do you think about the over-under for Jalen Hurts as far as passing yards go? The over-under is 238.5 passing yards. That's a tough number. His average on the year was somewhere around this too, and I think that's where they came up with this number here.
Tampa Bay is giving up an average of 248.
It's good. It's good. That's a good one right there.
That's tough because if you would have not put the number up on the screen, I would have given you like a 225 to 240 range.
Yeah. Yep.
So that's kind of like what's making this difficult for me. I think he's gonna have to go over that. I honestly do because I think Tampa Bay is gonna score points. So I think that he goes over it. It's a sweat bet for sure.
Yeah.
He probably goes over it on the last drive of the game. I think he goes for like 243. That's where I'm gonna. 243. So I'm gonna take the over. He's gonna go at 243. That's all right.
We'll have to keep track of these too if you could do that, and we'll keep track of these W's. We haven't predicted this game yet, but we got to put something on the line here for this for the playoffs record. I'm going to say that Jalen Hurts comes up just short. When you look at the first matchup against the Buccaneers this year, Week 3, they really relied on DeAndre Swift heavy in that game. He rushed for 130 yards. I think he had over 150 scrimmage yards in that game as well. I'd look for them to kind of, especially with the injury to Jalen Hurts, look to go to DeAndre Swift and Kenneth Gainwell early in this game. So I'm going to take just under that. I'm going to go with Jalen Hurts be having those games like 195 who had 2 rushing touchdowns. I think it's going to be one of those kind of games.
It's crazy. There's a lot of interesting takes in the chat right now. Marcus wants to know if I think that Hurts is still elite. I do, but I think that this season has put him in question mark of eliteness, but he was also like anointed eliteness by myself early. But I think it was deserved early because of what he did with that team last year. And his play on the field, but he's wavering. I will give you that. But a lot of people think under. We got
going
one
under the
over.
238 and one over.
Yeah, 2 overs and the rest were all unders.
Yeah, I like the under. And as far as the elite conversation, I've always said that Jalen Hurts was knocking on that door of elite. It's hard to put him in that elite category, and I think a lot of people were reluctant the same way with Lamar Jackson because they are dynamic kind of runners. They do a lot of different things from the quarterback position, not necessarily just dicing you up with the arm. So I do think it's difficult to put him in that elite category, considering the amount of interceptions, especially this year. But when you look at what he's done in total as a football player, 38 total touchdowns. I mean, I don't know how you can't be elite and score 38 touchdowns. It's kind of hard for me. Yeah. So it's very difficult. But I do think I would go with Jalen Hurts knocking on the door of elite. A lot of people don't like that, but I'm going to take the push on Jalen Hurts being elite. Before we move forward, let's get these scores real quickly for this game, and then we'll jump into that super chat. I see the super chat too, and then we'll push it to the Cowboys game. But what's your thoughts on the Philadelphia Eagles and the Bucs? Who you got for the winner?
I really wanted to take Tampa Bay. I really did. It's tough for me. It's tough. I'm gonna ride with the Eagles. I'm gonna take the Eagles 24-23. Eagles win on a game-winning field goal from Jake Elliott, and Jalen Hurts crosses over the 238.5 mark on that game-winning drive.
So you got this one being really close. the Eagles have just let me down week after week after week. I'm like, yeah, they'll get it together this week. 5 of the last 6. Michael Knight going 31-27. Tampa. Beige Boy going 23-20 for the Bucks. I don't know if that's just they hate for Philadelphia or not. Tommy, my man Tommy Football going 23-21 in favor of the Eagles. Payback NYC says Eagles by 4. I'm going Philadelphia Eagles. I think they're the better team, more prepared for this kind of a moment. It's going to take a hell of a game from Baker Mayfield for the Bucs to win this one, but give me the Philadelphia Eagles in this one. I think they get back in that win column. I'll go 27. It'll be an 8-point victory. I'm going to go 27-19 in favor of the Philadelphia Eagles.
All right, I'm keeping a dialogue check here. Big shout out to our guy, your guy, everybody's guy, Scotty Booms in the building.
Booms in the building
with the $19.99 super chat. Says when the beard starts talking about sweat bets, tread carefully, y'all. Scotty Booms, I don't know if you caught last week, Tuesday's episode, but we were briefly touched on the Scotty Booms, Chris Broussard lookalike thing.
Who said that? Who said that?
Can you remind me, Scotty Booms, who said you look like Chris Broussard?
Scotty does not look like no damn Chris Broussard, man. That is a lie. That is a lie.
I hope he's still in the chat and he can remind me who said that. But big shout out, Scotty Booms. We appreciate you, brother. Hope all is well. Big shout out to Marcus for the $4.99 super chat. Says Jalen Hurts has the same passing stat line as Dak from last year, and Dak played less games due to injury. Why is no one talking about Jalen Hurts' turnovers?
Yeah, I brought him up. Yeah, man. 15, the most from the Philadelphia Eagles since 1988. That's the most interceptions a quarterback has thrown. It's right in the Dak Prescott category. And I thought that there were a lot of people who overinflated what was wrong with Dak Prescott last year. You got to think he threw that. You were definitely one of them. And you got to think he threw that many interceptions in 4 or 5 less games than what Jalen Hurts has played this year. So it's more alarming than what Jalen Hurts did this year. But still, I think that these are the kind of quarterbacks you got to look at turnover-worthy plays as well. How many of those interceptions are really on the quarterback? And I think with Dak Prescott, a lot of people were ignoring those glaring issues that were like, okay, the turnover-worthy rate is not that high. With Jalen Hurts, they're putting a lot on that dude's plate. And I've talked about this a couple of weeks ago. No hot routes in that entire system. They're literally just letting this guy drop back and beat one-on-one matchups and try to find him on the field. So if they had a more complex offense, I think it would favor Jalen Hurts a lot more. And it reminds me of what's happening with Justin Fields with Chicago. It's like when you have a player of that magnitude, that type of skill set, you have to coach to that skill set. You can't try to fit him within your scheme. And with the Philadelphia Eagles, it just seems like their scheme is just extremely basic. So I got to put a lot of that on Nick Sirianni.
Yeah, and I think that one of the other reasons, too, is, and this kind of goes in line with, like, the Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts sort of style of play, Lamar Jackson, where when you're still scoring that many touchdowns, I think that, the turnovers are probably less talked about because they're producing so much offensively touchdown-wise, right? So you kind of forget. Not to say forget, because we don't forget, because we talk about it here, but I think it's not as an alarming factor as it was for Dak. And obviously because, like you said, with the short amount of span of time in which Dak threw those interceptions. And also I think that Dak, by producing the way he is this year after last year, has kind of maybe changed the narrative for a guy like Jalen Hurts. Which in a weird way, where it's like, we're maybe people are learning their lesson about talking about Dak and his turnovers last year after seeing what he did this year, and maybe not willing to jump the gun on Jalen Hurts' turnovers this year until they see what happens next year, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. And I think when you look at just football and fans in a total, there's more casual fans. So when they just see that high number, they're automatically going to say, oh, he's a turnover-worthy type of guy. And, those narratives are going to get spread faster. But I think if you really looked at the games and really watch, all the possessions from the Philadelphia Eagles like me and the Beard both have, Jalen Hurts does not come across as a guy who's just a turnover machine out there.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. But good point. Good point.
This is a good one here, too, and this wasn't a super chat, but Bergs brought this one up. I think this is a good way to revisit this. Julian Love did say last year that he thought Sirianni was getting a free ride on that team. He might have been onto something, and I do think he was onto something. I disagreed with that one at the time, too, because I want to say like Philly had just beat us, and then our season was over, and Julian Love was on NFL Network talking about somebody else getting a free ride, and it's like, bro, they just beat the brakes off us, and you missed that interception on the sideline where it was like literally right in your lap, and then Devonta Smith ends up catching the ball going into the end zone. But Bergs, that's a really good point. Nick Sirianni, I wouldn't call it quite a free ride, but I do think that, they're not doing Jalen Hurts a great service by setting him up with this style of offense that, a lot of people have referred to as a high school type of offense.
And what's crazy, too, is that the Dallas Cowboys and Philadelphia Eagles, but there's both talk going into this playoff game about both of these coaches' head jobs, and they've got a combined 23 wins between the two of them this year. So it's kind of crazy. And I do want to point out one thing, too, really quick, because I'm seeing what Kai's talking about. It's okay for Dak Prescott and Jalen Hurts to both be good, great quarterbacks, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's possible. I think sometimes people get, and a lot of this is because you're talking about two quarterbacks from the NFC East. You're talking about two teams that, maybe not necessarily the rivalry, but let's be honest, they're producing the most wins between any other, teams in the division. So for me, I think that sometimes it's easy for fans to kind of want to compare and take these drastic sort of things. Like, both of these quarterbacks can be great. Both of these quarterbacks are top quarterbacks in the National Football League. There's no real need to say, like, try and compare them, because they're also two different style quarterbacks, in my opinion, to a certain extent. So it's okay for both of these quarterbacks to be great quarterbacks, and for you to say that they're both great quarterbacks, even if you're a fan of the Cowboys or a fan of the Eagles, the Giants, or the Commanders. I know for a lot of people it's tough to say those sort of things, but it's okay, and I'm here to let you know that it's okay.
And you can, I would prefer if people just admit it. Like, I got some homies now that I've pinned them into the corner and been like, look, you can't be saying these kind of things about these players that have been proven that they're great players for a pretty long while now. You got to stand on your hater card. You got to just say, look, man, I don't get down with the Dallas Cowboys and F Dak Prescott.
I'm not mad at that at all. If you want to, if you just want to, a little preface like, hey, listen, I'm a hater. I hate the Dallas Cowboys, so I can't tell you otherwise. But just be honest about it. Like, I was honest at a point in this year. I just said it. I was like, listen, I am a Dallas Cowboy hater, but I came around. And I hope that you guys know that I've come around. I almost wore a short with flowers
I still think
on
that
it.
the hate is lingering somewhere deep
we'll
down
find
inside.
out here in a minute, right?
Once the tide change a little bit in your favor for them Commanders, I think that hate will start to come back out. I think I saw it was Kai that was saying that Jalen Hurts is just he's still struggling to read the field, and I think that he's somewhere in the middle of that. It's the last thing I'll say on that, but he's somewhere in the middle of it, because he does find great ways to read the safeties and find the one-on-one matchup, kind of like you described. And then when it's not there, he does try to check down. To me, where Jalen Hurts really lacks is pre-snap read. Whatever they're teaching him in Philly, you see it a lot of times where they're just outmanned, and you get a free rusher, not on the outside, too. If you guys don't know this, in the NFL, a quarterback will always prefer the free rusher to be on the edge of the line. When you get a free rusher in the A-gap or in the one gap, that's when things can be a real big issue. And you see that a lot with Jalen Hurts in this game against the Giants. That's how we got to him a lot. We sent the pressure right down the middle. They wouldn't account for it. And to have an offensive line that good and not have those schemes and those protection issues kind of ironed out, that's very surprising and very alarming if I'm a Philadelphia Eagles fan for sure. Mm-hmm. All right, let's go ahead and swing this one into the next game. I know there's a lot of the Cowboys fam in the building one time. Big shout out to all of y'all, man. We appreciate y'all pulling up and rocking out with us. Let's talk about the Green Bay Packers that are going to be headed to Jerry World to take on the Dallas Cowboys. All right, y'all, let's get right into it. This is probably my more favorite matchup of the two in the NFC East. I'm going to be featured in this matchup as well. I'll be out there playing on Sunday one time representing for them Green Bay Packers. Packers are sitting at 9-8. Dallas Cowboys, third straight season of 12-5, The Beard. I've been stressing that fact for a little bit here. Kickoff is Sunday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Opening line has the Cowboys favored by 7.5. The Packers lead the series with a record of 21-17. The last meeting, the Packers beat the Cowboys 31-28 in 2022. That game was in Green Bay. Aaron Rodgers was the quarterback in that game. The Packers came back on the shoulders of Aaron Rodgers and Christian Watson. He had 3 touchdowns in that matchup one time. And last week, the Packers beat the Bears to solidify their playoff hopes in that number 7 seed. The Cowboys beat the brakes off the Commanders 38-10. That one could have been a little bit worse there one time. These stats here are a little bit alarming. The Packers have beaten the Cowboys 4 straight times and have won 9 of the past 10 matchups. All of those came during the Aaron Rodgers era. This is going to be the first time the Cowboys and Packers have faced off in the wild card round. The Cowboys have won 16 consecutive regular season games at home this year, dating back to last year as well. It's the Cowboys' longest home winning streak since an 18-game run in the regular season at Texas Stadium from 1979 to 1981. This is the first home playoff game since Dallas started that winning streak. So I know, Dallas Cowboys fans, this is exactly what you wanted entering the year. You wanted to win the division, get that playoff game at home. But I think now there's a little bit of added pressure with this game being at home. And I'm definitely worried for y'all one time. Now, Mike McCarthy has a chance to become the first coach to win a playoff game against a team that he led to a Super Bowl title. I thought that, there's no coach that has ever won against a team that he led to a Super Bowl title.
It's hard to get to the Super Bowl, yet alone twice on 2 different teams.
Yeah. And this is just in the playoffs, period. That's what's so wild about it to me. No former coach that had took a team to the playoffs or took a team to the Super Bowl has beaten that team in the playoffs.
Yeah, because Andy Reid never made it to the Super Bowl with the Eagles. I'm just trying to think of some coaches that might have even been in that situation. It's an interesting one because it would require you to be, even to meet in the playoffs, it would require you to be in the same conference. And
Unless
if not in the same
Bowl,
conference, it have to be the Super Bowl, which, like I said, is hard to get to. That's interesting.
Yeah, I thought for sure that there would have been a coach that would have already done that. The Packers reached the playoffs despite not having any players selected to the Pro Bowl. The Dallas Cowboys coming into this one with 7 Pro Bowlers. The Packers don't got none. The Packers have the NFL's youngest roster in the entire league right now. I've been talking about the New York Giants and kind of giving us a pass on defense, especially with Wink Martindale and what he has done for that defense. Now he's no longer New York Giants DC, but for the Packers to come into this one with not only the youngest one side of the ball, but having the youngest team in the entire NFL. I mean, they did just squeak into the playoffs in the 7th seed, but that is impressive nonetheless. The Packers have the youngest weighted age of any playoff team dating all the way back to 1974 with the Buffalo Bills. So there's been a long time since we've had a young team like this in the playoffs. The Packers earned a wild card berth by winning their last 3 games straight, man. So pressure was cooking. I don't know if you remember last year, the Packers were in a very similar situation with Aaron Rodgers at the quarterback position. They had lost a lot of games early on in the year, and they had to win out. It came all the way down to that game against the Detroit Lions where they ended up losing that last game. Now, Dak Prescott, man, this dude has definitely been balling out. You know, I've been highlighting a lot of his statistics for it seems like the past 8-9 weeks, at least this whole back half of the season. 2 games all year where Dak Prescott did not throw a touchdown. I was looking at the game logs. His game against the New York Giants where they blew us out 40-0 was one of his worst games of the year. He did not have a touchdown pass in that game, and he only threw for just over 160 yards in that game. So really interesting. Dak Prescott, 11 games with multiple passing touchdowns this year. Led the NFL with 36 touchdown passes this season. And last week, dude had a great game against y'all. 31-36, 279 yards, 4 touchdowns, just 1 interception. He was sacked 0 times in that game. Now, CeeDee Lamb coming into this game, I thought this would be a really good matchup, although he is in the slot going up against Jair Alexander. But they're saying that Alexander rolled his ankle in practice today. It's looking a little bit dicey for him coming into this game. Lamb has 7 games with at least 10 receptions this season. An 8th would put him 1 behind Michael Thomas for the most games with at least 10 receptions in a season when you include the playoffs. Michael Thomas had 9 of those in 2019. And can't forget that CeeDee Lamb set Dallas franchise records for receptions this year, 135. It's absolutely ridiculous. He also set a franchise record for receiving yards as well with 1,749. A lot of people talked about Tyreek Hill pushing the 2K mark, and CeeDee Lamb was definitely doing that this year as well. He's coming off 13 receptions for 98 yards and 2 touchdowns against the Washington Commanders, who do have one of the worst secondaries in the league. Their pass defense, obviously not the same as the Packers, but the Packers coming into this one banged up is definitely going to be an issue. CeeDee Lamb had 13 catches in each of his past 2 regular season games. He could become the first player in NFL history with 13 receptions or more in 3 consecutive games. That's another one that I'm surprised no one has achieved that yet. Jordan Love, a.k.a. Awthentik's doppelganger, football on Sundays, YouTube on Mondays. Y'all know what it is, a giant overreaction, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every Monday. He is ranked second in the NFL in passing touchdowns with 32. Now, he definitely did finish out the year very strong to get to that number. I want to say 2 weeks ago I checked, and he was at 26 and 10. To end the year with 32 is amazing. Love has thrown 18 touchdown passes and 1 interception over the past 8 games. So we talked about how he started with a great spark in the year. October was a little bit difficult for your boy.
Yeah, he went through a 6-game stretch where he threw 6 touchdowns and 9 interceptions.
Yeah, that was definitely in October. He was definitely struggling. And he started off the year with 2 touchdown passes in both of the first 2 games. So now to go 8 games, that's better than that Trevor Lawrence streak we had last year where he was 10 touchdowns, 1 interception. 18 touchdowns and 1 interception over your past 8 games. I mean, he could quite possibly be the hottest quarterback in the NFL right now, flying under the radar. He also threw for 4,000 yards this season. He joined Kurt Warner and Patrick Mahomes as the only NFL players to have reached 4,000 or more passing yards and 32 or more passing touchdowns in their first season with multiple starts. That is great, great company. For sure. This matchup is one of those ones. I think that the Dallas Cowboys are in more of a little bit of a trap game situation than the Philadelphia Eagles are, because the Eagles, y'all just got to come out there and just play y'all ball. If y'all play y'all ball, y'all will likely win this game. The Dallas Cowboys are going up against an offense that we know can put up points on the board. If you don't get a hot start in this game, I think the Dallas Cowboys could be in trouble here. But what are your thoughts on this matchup here going against the Packers?
There's a lot to digest here, obviously. First and foremost, I don't get to do this quite often, but I will do it right now. I told you guys about Jordan Love. I told you guys about Jordan Love on multiple occasions over the course of the last couple of years. So I just want to, little love for the beard, because I'm wrong more times than I'm right. So when I'm right, I'd like to let everybody know about it. So Dallas, the number one thing on my list, when you said it too, number one thing on my notes right here is, outside of Jordan Love and his debuts, Dallas pressure. Dallas is, like, a lot of people, like, this is interesting because when you talk about playoffs, right, you're like, Jordan Love, first playoff start. But Jordan Love kind of strikes me as a dude who's he's just very even keel.
You
right?
said this about Sam Howell earlier this year.
I was wrong about that, but
You did say that about Sam Howell this year.
I did, and it's still Sam still strikes me as a guy like that. But I think as far as the pressure getting to him, I don't think that he's really a guy that he kind of just goes out there and just is in his zone, right? But Dallas collectively, I don't think it's necessary. I'm not worried about Dak being under pressure or I think Dallas collectively has to feel some sort of way, right? Like 3 seasons in a row, 12 wins, home playoff game, haven't lost at home all year. It's just, there's a lot, like, you cannot go into this game and lose, right? You can't. So it's like Green Bay's kind of playing with house money, right? Like Jordan Love's first year getting into the league, basically playing every single game, and just they're playing with house money. Nobody expected them to be here. Dallas, on the other hand, a lot of people, except for me, obviously, had Dallas being in this position. So Dallas is under more pressure for sure. You talked about Jordan Love during that stretch, and then I talked about the other stretch that Jordan Love went through. So it's going to be interesting which Jordan Love shows up for this game. Let's not forget, the Dallas defense is a good defense. They've had these pockets of not being great, but being better than a lot of other teams' defenses, especially my team. But, it's going to be interesting to see which Jordan Love shows up and which Dallas's defense shows up. Because Jordan Love is a top 10 quarterback when it's all said and done at the end of the year, statistically. He's 7th in the NFL in yards, 2nd in the NFL in touchdown, 9th in the NFL in QBR. Jordan Love came out and balled out this year, and he's a big reason why they're in the playoffs. And think about all the injuries. Watson's been out
everywhere
so many times. Dobbs has missed games. Jaden Reed has missed games. Dylan Jones, not to mention the defense has lost guys for the year.
Yeah.
It's amazing that, it's kind of like a lot of people talk about Mike LaFleur and they want to like correlate his success with Aaron Rodgers to a certain extent, right? But, we talked about what Mike Tomlin has done with that roster. Obviously Green Bay has a better quarterback on their roster than any of the quarterbacks on Pittsburgh Steelers roster. But both of these teams have dealt with a lot of injuries at key positions. And you talked about being the youngest team. It's like, they had rookies get hurt and had other rookies that had to step in and play big roles for this team. And I think, they did really good at drafting some wide receivers after Aaron Rodgers leaves. But I mean, like Jaden Reed has been an absolute smashing success. He's leading the team in receiving yards. Outside of Watson and Dobbs, who are in their second years. Then you got Wicks, who came in out of nowhere. But not to mention the tight end. What's his name? Tyler Kraft, I think his name is. He's had a great year, too. So they're young. They have some young weapons there for sure, right? Now, Green Bay, I thought that they would be a little bit better of a running team yardage-wise per game. They're actually middle of the pack, 15th in the league in rushing yards per game at 112.1. We talk about Dallas's run defense and how it can be their Achilles heel of their defense, right? Their defense is good. Rush defense isn't that bad. It's about middle of the pack too, 17th. So they're giving up 112.4. So we're in this matchup zone now where you got a team that averages $112 and a team that gives up $112, right? So there's going to have to be some push on one. Tucker Kraft, thank you very much. I always want to call him Tyler Kraft. I don't know why. But you have, these two guys right here. Somebody's going to have to win that matchup. Can somebody get above or somebody, outperform what they've been doing all year long in the trenches? Because, playoff time, it's going to come down to the trenches. I love me some trenches, okay? Green Bay, though, going up against this Dallas defense who can force some turnovers, and which is one of the main reasons why that team can score 24 points in a quarter like it's nothing. Because if you force a turnover and you give that ball to Dak and CD in good field position, it's game over. You know what I'm saying? Green Bay, though, 8th lowest turnover percentage in the National Football League at 9.2%. Okay, so that's going to be a little bit tough right there. And Green Bay's defense, though, pass defense is pretty good. But you talked about Jair Alexander. That could be huge for them.
That really could be.
Because Green Bay, there's only 9 other teams in the National Football League that have allowed fewer passing touchdowns than the Green Bay Packers. Okay, so it's not going to be a field day. It could be, and I think that Dak will perform in this game. I don't have any concerns about Dak, really. I don't think we're going to see like a Dak choke job or anything like that. But Green Bay is going to do their best to make it as difficult as possible for sure, right? Dallas has they're number 1 in passing touchdowns, 4th in, and this is another thing too about Dak. You want to talk about Dak and those interceptions last year? Dallas Cowboys, 4th lowest interception percentage in the National Football League at 1.6%.
That's Dak Prescott for you.
What a turnaround for Dak Prescott. So big props to Dak Prescott for sure. And on the other end, Green Bay, they're not. Bland has more pick. I might be exaggerating this. How many pick sixes does Bland have? 6?
I think he had. Was it 6
or 7? Somebody I know, the Dallas Cowboy fan, and I think it was 7. Did he have 7 pick sixes? No way.
Look, my initial response was going to be 8, but I'm going to say it was 6. I think he has. I'm going to say it was 6.
He has that, right? Green Bay, as a collective unit defensively, has the second fewest interceptions overall in the entire NFL. They only have 7 interceptions as a team. Deron Bland got 5 pick sixes by himself. So it's like Green Bay is going to have to find a way to force a turnover, because I don't know if you can go toe-to-toe without forcing a turnover against the Dallas Cowboys. And so for me, the last thing I'm going to talk about is, Dallas Cowboys, outside of where they are with passing touchdowns, the passing yards, 258.6 per game. It's going to be interesting. This is going to be a game where you are not going to be allowed to make a mistake. Dallas Cowboys or Green Bay Packers. If I were to say that one team would be allowed to make a mistake more so than the other, it would be the Dallas Cowboys, obviously. But if you're Green Bay Packers, you cannot afford to make a mistake. You cannot turn the ball over in your own red zone, and you cannot turn the ball over in Dallas's territory red zone. Like if you're about to score, that's a given, right? You just
can't turn the ball over.
Those are two things, right? But like in a playoff game, as an underdog against a team that can score 24 plus points in a quarter, you cannot make those decisions. If interception is like a punt on a 3rd down and 10, and you throw a 40-yard interception, you can recover from that, okay? I wouldn't suggest it, but it's a lot easier to recover from that situation than turning the ball over in your own territory or turning the ball over in the red zone and leaving with 0 points.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you on that. I do think that the Packers have a better ability to come back, though. If they get down on the scoreboard and let's say they had a turnover early on in this game, it's weird, but I kind of trust Jordan Love a little bit more down by 10 in the fourth quarter than I do trust Dak Prescott to be down. I think the pressure you're talking about is going to be cooking, at a hotter temperature if Dak Prescott and them are down in this game in the fourth quarter. You want to see Dallas get off to the leads that we've seen early on in this year where they kind of coast to a victory, and they're relying on that defense to take care of business against a predictable offense that's going to be dropping back and throwing the ball down by a couple of scores. But before we give our scores here one time, I want to I told you I had another prop bet here one time. This one's going to be for Dak Prescott here. Over under as well on the yards, 280 passing yards, 280 and a half for your boy Dak Prescott. I'm going to take the over right off the bat. I'm taking the over. I think Dak Prescott going to go out here and light it up.
Yeah, I think I'm going to take the over too. I think he goes for like 295. That's what I'm going to say. So we're
295. Okay.
We're both going to take the over under.
Yeah, I'm going 320 for Dak, 3 touchdowns. So let's get your score before we get up out of here one time. I know you've predicted that the Dallas Cowboys would win just 8 games this year.
Yeah, and I've also only picked 2 Dallas games wrong all year. Just throwing that out there, okay?
Spike don't care.
My thumb, bro. My thumb.
I thought about taking Green Bay. I really did. But I think it's a good matchup. It's a tough one. If we were switching these teams matchups, I would have immediately taken Dallas, no question, over Tampa Bay, right? And I would have probably picked Green Bay over Philadelphia. I'm going to take the Dallas Cowboys. I'm going to take the Dallas Cowboys to win this game. I think it's going to be a close one. I think it's going to be a shootout. I'm going to go 34-30 Dallas.
So you got a 3-point win for the Eagles, a 4-point win for the Cowboys. I think it'll be a little bit larger of a margin there. I'm going to go. See, I don't look at the Green Bay Packers defense as bad as I look at the Washington Commanders. So I don't think that the Cowboys are going to put up over 30. I'm going to go 28-23 Dallas Cowboys. Let's get these 2 super chats one time. We got one from the we got 2, it looks like, from Behind the Fiends. I don't think we got this.
Big shout out to Behind the Fiends for the $5 super chat. Says the Cowboys better not take the Packers lightly with their suspect run defense. If the Pack can get their play action game going, that's a really good point. It could be a dogfight. I think that's definitely one thing that is really important. If they can do that, they might put up those 30 points. They might not win, but I think that's a great point about the play action game.
Yeah, that's big facts right there. Big shout out to Behind the Fiends, man, representing all the way from Hawaii. We got another one from them as well.
Name. Behind the Fiends is such a good name. Shout out to Behind the Fiends for a $2 super chat. Says Packers got a horseshoe up their butts with quarterbacks. No bull.
Yeah,
listen, it's crazy. I mean, coming from a guy and listen, you guys can say whatever you want, New York Giants fans. I don't want to hear y'all complaining about quarterbacks because we have the worst quarterback situation of any NFC East team over the last 20-plus years.
This is facts. Yeah.
Okay.
You know, what have you done for me lately? Our quarterback situation has been pretty bad, too.
Yeah.
You know, when I look at the Packers, the wins are a little bit suspect, against some of the competition. You got Bears, Vikings, Panthers, the Chiefs. That's an impressive win right there. They did beat the Lions one time, too. That's another impressive win.
Teams.
Chargers, Rams, that's another playoff
3
team right there.
teams.
That's a good one. Who else they get a W against? They lost to the Falcons. Ugh. And then they beat the Bears again at the end of the season there, and they also beat the Saints. So some sketchy, got some good dubs, but
so they probably have the same amount of playoff wins. Wins against playoff teams as Dallas does.
maybe more. I mean, that's 3 we saw there for sure. Yeah,
because Dallas got 2 against Philly, right?
Just 1 against Philly.
Philly
beat
that's
them
right.
the first time.
So 1 against Philly and 1 against Detroit.
Yeah, 1 against Detroit.
Dallas beat the Rams too, right?
Dallas beat the Rams, so it's probably 3-3. Yep. Yeah. That's a good look. But big shout out to Behind the Fiends one time. Make sure y'all go check out his podcast. I don't know if he still got that popping, but definitely a big supporter of the channel. Big salute to you, fam.
And big shout out to Amaret Dhaliwal with the $9.99 super chat. Keep shining, my guys. All I love. Go New York Giants. Appreciate you very much. Thank you very much.
Big facts, man. Salute to the gang, man. We appreciate y'all pulling up, especially the Giants fans, Commanders fans who, we only got no teams in this, ain't got no business talking about these other 2 teams here, but y'all up here pulling up, rocking out with your boys Awthentik and The Beard, man. So big shout out to all of y'all. So we got the final scores for this Philadelphia Eagles matchup and for this Cowboys pack that they're gonna be smoking on. We'll see, man. I gotta keep it real with you, bro. Like, I want them to at least get out the wild card round. I really do. I don't want that pressure you was talking about on my man Mike McCarthy one time. Like, he don't deserve that, man. 3 straight seasons, 12 wins. I don't think he deserves that. But we'll see how it goes down, man. Like you talked about, ton of pressure on the Dallas Cowboys. Definitely a ton of pressure. This was a good vibe. I think Sunday we'll probably pull up and pick the rest of the games outside of the Saturday. We'll see. Me and The Beard kind of haven't even chopped it up about that. Maybe we pull up on Saturday, give y'all some content. We'll see how it goes. But keep your ears, your eyes peeled on the community tab. We'll let you know what's good. And definitely dropping videos, man, like throughout these weeks, the off season here. Got a couple of more streams I'm doing with Bleacher Report to end out the month as well. We ain't taking no breaks, Beard. We going.
No, and listen, and
heavy.
I will you'll probably catch this beautiful face as soon as we get some announcements here for the Washington Commanders.
you like how I went to the cut sequence?
Thanks.
You did give him some jazz fingers there one time. I saw a little bit of
because we might make an announcement on our president of football operations as early as Sunday or Monday. So it's going to be interesting to see. The rumor is we've narrowed it down to 2 choices, so
okay.
I'm pretty ecstatic about one more so than the other, but I think both of them are going to be good choices, so we'll see.
Yeah, Giants just hired a new offensive line coach. We got him from the Las Vegas Raiders. I don't know how great I feel about that. It's one of Brian Dable's buddies from New England, So
here we go. I forgot about that. The New York Bills.
Yeah, the New York Football Bills and the we were birthed by the New England Patriots. I swear, it's because we had Joe Judge, who was from the Patriot tree of coaching, and now we got Brian Dable, who's from the Patriot tree of coaching. Bill Belichick did his last press conference today with the New England Patriots as well, man. So I know a lot of people are not looking at it as if Bill Belichick could come in and be a defensive coordinator, but I hope we all wrong. I don't see Bill Belichick demoting himself to defensive coordinator, but listen, I don't look at it like the Beard looks at it. He said he wanted nothing to do with Bill Belichick.
Nope.
Man, listen, y'all could demote Brian Dable, put him as the offensive coordinator, and bring in Bill Belichick as the head coach. I ain't got no beef with that. I will welcome Bill Belichick with open arms over here. They talking about the OG getting too old. That's why guys like him and Pete Carroll getting fired because they're too old. It's time for them to retire. You know me, man. I represent for them OGs all day
Pete
long,
Carroll
man.
All right, if I had to choose, I'd take Pete Carroll over Bill Belichick right now.
Yeah, that's cool. I don't agree with you on that, but that's cool. You know what I'm saying? I think they got rid of both of those coaches a little bit too early. With Bill Belichick, the quarterback situation obviously has been hell with New England. And he didn't really know how to use Cam Newton, I feel like to his full potential either. But with Pete Carroll, I feel like he had a decent roster over there. Defensive front, not too bad. 2 young cornerbacks, a good pair of wide receivers over there, wide receiver 1A and B. Geno Smith being a pretty decent quarterback. Kenneth Walker III being a solid running back, and things just not panning out. Noah Fant still over there as the tight end too. So, definitely had a lot of pieces, and things kind of fell apart for them. In a weaker conference as well. But I hope, I wish the best for both of those guys. I hope they both, I know that Bill Belichick wants to coach. Robert Kraft insinuated that in the press conference. I got to watch it all today, but I don't know about Pete Carroll. But
he's taking a job within the organization.
Oh, that's what it is. Okay.
Yeah, he's going to be working with the front office in Seattle moving forward.
So no more coaching for him, but best of luck to him with that new position. Any last words before we get the fam up out of here?
Got one last big shout out to Behind the Fiends for the $5 super chat. Says, want to give a shout out to Nick Saban, who also retired. For an amazing career. He's in Ohio State for life, but man, what a run. Legend, GOAT. Yeah. Nick Saban, listen, he rubs a lot of people the wrong way, but there's two things that guy knew three things that guy really knew how to do on a different level than a lot of people in college football. Because a lot of people, have to remember that college football head coach job is a lot different than it is in the National Football League. He was an absolutely phenomenal recruiter. He is one of the best recruiters of all time. And then also defensively, he put together some of the craziest teams at Alabama. And then just as an overall coach, especially in clutch games, because playing in the SEC and going on the run that he went on, and he not just at Alabama, people, obviously he had a bad stint at Miami and the NFL, but before that, LSU, he won a national championship at LSU too. So big shout out to Nick Saban, one of the best to ever do it at the college level for sure.
Yeah, big facts, man. Big facts, yo. Definitely appreciate all y'all pulling up for this edition of the Wildcard Weekend Preview. Big shout out to the homie Zach one time. Is that the last one? Just so I can make sure?
Yeah, it's the last one. He's trolling me. Josh McDaniels from Washington, best choice.
I like that. Definitely
Not
like that.
Not a chance. I love you, though, man. I love you, man.
We hope so as New York Giants fans, but y'all know what it is, man. Keep raising that bar. Keep living those dreams because the universe flows in Technicolor and surround sound. Y'all be good. Enjoy y'all Wild Card Weekend. Make sure you pull up. Check on that YouTube tab. We'll let you know what we're doing this week. Until then, man, enjoy the rest of y'all week, y'all. Peace.